The ocean stretched endlessly, a vast blue expanse shimmering under the golden light of the sun. Waves rippled gently at the surface, but beneath them lay a different world, one of silence, mystery, and unseen life. Schools of fish darted between coral reefs, sea turtles glided gracefully, and deep within the depths, two brothers swam side by side. They were sharks, sleek, powerful, and feared by many who did not understand them. The older brother was bold, often venturing close to unfamiliar objects, always curious about the world above. The younger, more cautious, observed from a distance, studying before acting. They hunted together, played together, and ruled their part of the ocean without fear. But today, something was different. A shadow loomed over the water, a boat. It was not the first time they had seen one, but this one felt different. The older brother, intrigued as always, swam closer, circling beneath the wooden hull. He had seen boats before, seen the strange creatures that moved within them, but they had never seemed dangerous. His younger brother hung back, his instincts warning him to be wary. Then came the splash. A silver fish wriggled on the surface, hooked onto a long, thin line. The older shark lunged forward, sensing an easy meal, but as he did, a sharp, metallic object shot through the water. A harpoon. It struck him with brutal force, piercing deep into his side. He let out a silent, pained thrash, his powerful tail sending waves crashing in every direction. Blood clouded the water instantly. His younger brother, frozen in horror, watched as the men above cheered, pulling their prize toward the surface. Desperate, the younger shark rushed forward, his instincts screaming to do something. He bit at the rope that dragged his brother away, but the men above were stronger. The wounded shark struggled, twisting and writhing, but it was no use. The harpoon dug deeper, his strength failing him. As he was lifted above the water, he locked eyes with his brother one last time. Then he was gone. Silence. The younger shark remained, staring at the blood-stained water. The world felt different now, colder. A part of him had been ripped away, leaving behind only anger. Above, the fishermen laughed, celebrating their victory. They had no idea that below, in the darkening sea, something had awakened. A promise. A hunt had begun. The ocean never forgets. It carries the memories of battles fought, of lives lost, of promises made. The younger shark swam alone now, his powerful body slicing through the currents. But something had changed, his movements were no longer those of a curious, free-spirited hunter. They were calculated, precise, driven by a force he had never felt before. Vengeance. The scent of his brother's blood still lingered in the water, a cruel reminder of the moment he had been torn away. It mixed with the salty brine, drifting like a whisper through the sea. The younger shark followed it, his mind replaying the harpoon strike, the way his brother's body had been yanked upward, the laughter of the men above. His keen senses stretched outward, searching for the boat. The floating structure that had stolen his family. It could not have gone far. He would find it. And when he did, he would ensure they felt the weight of their actions. For hours, he moved through the deep, shadowing the waves above. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, sending golden streaks through the water, illuminating the world in an eerie glow. Then, finally, he saw it, a shape cutting through the surface. The boat. His muscles tensed. The scent of fish, oil, and sweat drifted down. The men were still there, unaware that something lurked beneath them. The shark circled once, assessing, planning. He was not like his brother, he did not act recklessly. No, he would strike with purpose. His first move had to be silent. With slow, deliberate movements, he swam to the underside of the boat. He could hear the wooden frame creak, the water lapping against the hull. The humans were speaking in their strange, guttural sounds, oblivious to the presence just below them. Then, without warning, the shark slammed his body against the bottom of the boat. A loud crack echoed through the water. The force sent vibrations rippling through the sea. Above, startled shouts rang out. The fishermen stumbled, confused. The boat rocked dangerously, nearly throwing them off balance. Before they could react, the shark struck again. Harder. Thud. This time, the impact was powerful enough to shake the entire vessel. The men scrambled, peering over the edge, searching for the source. But the shark was already gone, disappearing into the darkness below. Panic set in. "What was that?" one of them shouted. "Something hit us, hard," another answered, gripping the side of the boat. The shark circled again, waiting. The fear had begun to take hold. Good. This was just the beginning. The ocean never forgets. It carries the memories of battles fought, of lives lost, of promises made. The younger shark swam alone now, his powerful body slicing through the currents. But something had changed, his movements were no longer those of a curious, free-spirited hunter. They were calculated, precise, driven by a force he had never felt before. Vengeance. The scent of his brother's blood still lingered in the water, a cruel reminder of the moment he had been torn away. It mixed with the salty brine, drifting like a whisper through the sea. The younger shark followed it, his mind replaying the harpoon strike, the way his brother's body had been yanked upward, the laughter of the men above. His keen senses stretched outward, searching for the boat. The floating structure that had stolen his family. It could not have gone far. He would find it. And when he did, he would ensure they felt the weight of their actions. For hours, he moved through the deep, shadowing the waves above. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, sending golden streaks through the water, illuminating the world in an eerie glow. Then, finally, he saw it, a shape cutting through the surface. The boat. His muscles tensed. The scent of fish, oil, and sweat drifted down. The men were still there, unaware that something lurked beneath them. The shark circled once, assessing, planning. He was not like his brother, he did not act recklessly. No, he would strike with purpose. His first move had to be silent. With slow, deliberate movements, he swam to the underside of the boat. He could hear the wooden frame creak, the water lapping against the hull. The humans were speaking in their strange, guttural sounds, oblivious to the presence just below them. Then, without warning, the shark slammed his body against the bottom of the boat. A loud crack echoed through the water. The force sent vibrations rippling through the sea. Above, startled shouts rang out. The fishermen stumbled, confused. The boat rocked dangerously, nearly throwing them off balance. Before they could react, the shark struck again. Harder. Thud. This time, the impact was powerful enough to shake the entire vessel. The men scrambled, peering over the edge, searching for the source. But the shark was already gone, disappearing into the darkness below. Panic set in. "What was that?" one of them shouted. "Something hit us, hard," another answered, gripping the side of the boat. The shark circled again, waiting. The fear had begun to take hold. Good. This was just the beginning. The ocean never forgets. It carries the memories of battles fought, of lives lost, of promises made. The younger shark swam alone now, his powerful body slicing through the currents. But something had changed, his movements were no longer those of a curious, free-spirited hunter. They were calculated, precise, driven by a force he had never felt before. Vengeance. The scent of his brother's blood still lingered in the water, a cruel reminder of the moment he had been torn away. It mixed with the salty brine, drifting like a whisper through the sea. The younger shark followed it, his mind replaying the harpoon strike, the way his brother's body had been yanked upward, the laughter of the men above. His keen senses stretched outward, searching for the boat. The floating structure that had stolen his family. It could not have gone far. He would find it. And when he did, he would ensure they felt the weight of their actions. For hours, he moved through the deep, shadowing the waves above. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, sending golden streaks through the water, illuminating the world in an eerie glow. Then, finally, he saw it, a shape cutting through the surface. The boat. His muscles tensed. The scent of fish, oil, and sweat drifted down. The men were still there, unaware that something lurked beneath them. The shark circled once, assessing, planning. He was not like his brother, he did not act recklessly. No, he would strike with purpose. His first move had to be silent. With slow, deliberate movements, he swam to the underside of the boat. He could hear the wooden frame creak, the water lapping against the hull. The humans were speaking in their strange, guttural sounds, oblivious to the presence just below them. Then, without warning, the shark slammed his body against the bottom of the boat. A loud crack echoed through the water. The force sent vibrations rippling through the sea. Above, startled shouts rang out. The fishermen stumbled, confused. The boat rocked dangerously, nearly throwing them off balance. Before they could react, the shark struck again. Harder. Thud. This time, the impact was powerful enough to shake the entire vessel. The men scrambled, peering over the edge, searching for the source. But the shark was already gone, disappearing into the darkness below. Panic set in. "What was that?" one of them shouted. "Something hit us, hard," another answered, gripping the side of the boat. The shark circled again, waiting. The fear had begun to take hold. Good. This was just the beginning. The fishermen peered anxiously over the edge of the boat, their expressions a mixture of confusion and unease. The ocean had gone eerily still, as if the sea itself was holding its breath. The younger shark lurked just below, his powerful body gliding through the depths with deadly precision. His mind was focused, his instincts sharpened by grief and fury. His brother had been taken from him. The men above had laughed as they dragged his lifeless body from the sea, treating him as nothing more than a trophy. But they had underestimated the bond between siblings, between hunters of the deep. The young shark was not just seeking revenge, he was fulfilling a duty, honoring a promise whispered through the waves. He would not allow these men to leave the ocean without understanding its wrath. With one final glance upward, he saw his opportunity. One of the fishermen, a man with weathered skin and a thick beard, was leaning over the edge, scanning the water. His hand clutched a harpoon, the same weapon that had pierced his brother's flesh. That would be the first to go. Summoning his strength, the shark propelled himself upward with terrifying speed. The water churned violently as he breached the surface, his massive jaws parting just enough to clamp onto the wooden side of the boat. The force of his attack sent a shudder through the vessel, causing the men to stumble backward in shock. The bearded fisherman lost his balance. The harpoon slipped from his grasp, tumbling into the water below. "What the hell?" someone shouted, scrambling toward the center of the boat. The young shark released his grip and plunged back into the water, disappearing into the depths as quickly as he had emerged. The taste of wood lingered in his mouth, but he had achieved his first goal, disarm them. Above, the men were panicking now. Their eyes darted across the waves, searching for the creature that had just attacked them. "This isn't normal," another man muttered, his voice shaking. "Sharks don't act like this." But this was not an ordinary shark. Below, the young predator circled again, his mind racing. His first strike had sown fear. Now, he needed to divide them. A few feet away, a thick rope trailed from the back of the boat, dragging along the surface. It was connected to a secondary anchor, small but strong. If he could sever it, the boat would lose some of its stability, making it harder for the men to control. Lunging forward, he bit down with crushing force. The rope snapped instantly. The boat jerked, shifting awkwardly in the water. Shouts erupted from above. The shark swam back into the darkness. This was only the beginning. The fishing boat lurched as the severed rope sent it drifting sideways. The men on board stumbled, grabbing onto whatever they could to keep from tumbling into the sea. Panic spread through them like wildfire. "That shark, it's not acting normal," one of the crewmen shouted, his voice edged with fear. "Where the hell did it go?" another demanded, gripping the side of the boat as his eyes darted across the rolling waves. Below the surface, the young shark swam in slow, deliberate circles. His sharp senses picked up the frantic movements of the men above, their heartbeats pounding, their voices trembling. He had shaken them, but he needed to break them. The ocean was his domain, and these men were trespassers. Rising slightly, he let the tip of his dorsal fin break through the surface, gliding ominously around the boat. The moment one of the fishermen caught sight of it, a fresh wave of terror spread across their faces. "There," the bearded fisherman shouted. He grabbed another harpoon from a nearby crate, his hands shaking as he struggled to aim. But the young shark was faster. The moment he saw the weapon raised, he dove, just as the harpoon splashed uselessly into the water. The men cursed. Their fear was turning to frustration, and frustration led to mistakes. Beneath them, the shark scanned the boat's structure. He had weakened it, but it was still afloat. He needed to push harder. He spotted the rudder, the very thing that allowed the fishermen to steer. If he could take that out, they'd be helpless. Summoning his strength, he charged forward. The impact was explosive. Wood splintered beneath his powerful jaws. The entire boat shuddered, and for a moment, it tilted dangerously to one side. The fisherman screamed. "What the hell is happening? That thing just rammed the boat." The bearded man struggled to maintain control. "We need to get out of here. Start the damn engine." But when one of the crewmen rushed toward the controls, his hands froze over the buttons. The rudder was broken. The boat was now adrift. The young shark pulled away from the wreckage, feeling the vibrations of fear radiating from the men. They were trapped. For a moment, he hesitated. His instincts urged him to strike again, to finish them. But something deep inside held him back. He had not come here for simple revenge. He had come to teach them a lesson. Circling once more, he let his presence be known. The men huddled together, powerless, staring into the water with wide, fearful eyes. They now understood what it meant to feel helpless in the face of something greater than themselves. And that was only the beginning. The young shark circled the fishing boat, his sleek body cutting through the water with precision. The boat drifted aimlessly, unable to steer with its rudder broken. The fishermen, once fearless hunters of the sea, now huddled together in uncertainty. Their weapons were still within reach, but what good were they against an opponent who controlled the water itself? Fear clung to them like salt in the air. "We're sitting ducks out here," one of the men muttered, gripping the wooden railing so tightly his knuckles turned white. The bearded fisherman, the one who had driven the harpoon into the young shark's brother, tried to maintain his composure. "We need to stay calm," he said, though his voice betrayed his own unease. "We'll fix the rudder, start the engine, and get out of here before that thing decides to take us down." But the shark wasn't finished. With a flick of his powerful tail, he dove deep beneath the boat. The men braced themselves, expecting another violent collision. But it never came. Instead, an eerie silence settled over the ocean. The waves lapped gently against the hull, rocking the boat like a cradle. Then, a splash. One of the fishermen turned, his eyes darting across the surface. "Did you hear that?" Another splash, closer this time. The water rippled. And then, out of the blue, a dark shape lunged. The shark's massive body emerged from the depths in a sudden, violent burst. His tail slammed against the side of the boat, sending a spray of seawater over the deck. The boat tilted dangerously, forcing the men to scramble for balance. One of them, a younger fisherman, lost his footing. Time seemed to slow as he stumbled backward. His foot caught on a coil of rope, and before he could regain control, he toppled over the railing. A scream cut through the air as he splashed into the dark waters below. The shark turned. The fisherman flailed helplessly, eyes wide with panic as the water swallowed him whole. He thrashed, his arms reaching for anything to hold on to. But there was nothing. Only the deep, endless abyss. Javier, one of the other men shouted, rushing toward the railing. Get him out of there. Javier gasped for air, kicking frantically. His eyes met the dark, unblinking gaze of the young shark just below the surface. The men aboard scrambled, tossing a lifebuoy into the water. Grab it, kid. But Javier wasn't looking at them. He was looking at the shark. And the shark was looking back. For a moment, the world went still. Then, in an act that stunned everyone, the shark turned, and nudged Javier toward the lifebuoy. The men froze in shock. Javier, barely believing what had just happened, reached for the rope and clung to it desperately. The others hauled him back onto the deck, gasping in disbelief. The young shark didn't attack. He didn't take the life that had been offered so vulnerably. Instead, he turned once more and vanished into the depths. The deck of the fishing boat was silent, except for the heavy breaths of the men still reeling from what they had just witnessed. Javier lay on the wooden planks, drenched and gasping, his mind struggling to process what had happened. He had been at the mercy of a predator, one that had every reason to take his life, but instead, the shark had saved him. The bearded fisherman, still gripping the harpoon that had killed the young shark's brother, looked out over the dark waves. His face, once hardened with confidence, was now shadowed with confusion. Why? Why would a shark, a creature known for its primal instincts, spare a human? Javier sat up, his hands shaking. Did you see that? He murmured, still catching his breath. It pushed me back. It could have killed me, but it didn't. No one responded. The young shark had disappeared beneath the surface, but his presence was still palpable, lingering in the air like an unspoken warning. The men had hunted the ocean for years, seen sharks dragged up in their nets, watched them thrash and fight before meeting their fate. But none of them had ever owed a life to one. We need to get out of here, one of the fishermen muttered. The bearded man nodded. Fix the rudder. Start the engine. We leave now. But fate had other plans. As they scrambled to repair the damage, the wind shifted, bringing with it an unnatural stillness. The sky, once clear, darkened as a storm gathered on the horizon. The water, which had moments ago been calm, now churned, waves beginning to rise. And then, a fin appeared. Not just one. Many. Dark shadows circled the boat, their sleek forms cutting through the water like ghosts. The men tensed, hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. But there were too many. Far too many. A terrifying realization settled over them. The young shark hadn't left. He had called for others. Panic set in. The fishermen scrambled, pulling up their nets, trying to mend the rudder faster. The ocean itself felt like it was closing in, the finned figures moving in perfect synchrony. The bearded fisherman gritted his teeth. Get the engine running, now. A sudden thud shook the boat. Then another. The sharks rammed the hull, testing its strength. The men barely had time to react before a wave crashed over the deck, nearly sweeping them off their feet. Javier clung to the railing, eyes darting toward the water. The young shark was there, leading the charge, his movements precise and deliberate. He wasn't acting alone. He was commanding. The ocean was no longer the fisherman's territory. And for the first time, they felt like prey. The boat lurched violently as another impact struck its hull. The fishermen stumbled, their hands grasping at anything stable. The once calm sea had transformed into a swirling nightmare, waves crashing against the vessel with unrelenting force. Javier's heart pounded in his chest. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. The sharks were attacking in unison, their sleek bodies cutting through the water like spectral warriors. And leading them, was the young shark. The one who had saved his life. But now, it was clear. This was not mercy. This was retribution. Another jolt rocked the boat, knocking one of the men off his feet. He scrambled back up, his face pale with fear. "They're gonna sink us," he shouted. The bearded fisherman gritted his teeth. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the harpoon, his instincts telling him to fight back, but what use was a single weapon against the vengeance of the ocean? The sharks circled tighter, their dorsal fins slicing through the water like knives. Javier had spent his life on the sea, but never before had he felt so powerless. The water, once a source of livelihood, now felt like a graveyard in waiting. "Get the engine running," someone screamed. One of the fishermen struggled with the controls, but the storm had worsened, the wind howling through the open waters. The boat was damaged, its rudder barely responding. Every second that passed, the sharks grew bolder, bumping the hull harder, testing its weak points. Then came the worst sound of all, splintering wood. Javier turned just in time to see one of the hull's weakened planks break apart, sending a rush of water onto the deck. The boat was taking on water. "We're sinking," someone yelled. The fishermen panicked, grabbing ropes, trying desperately to stabilize the boat. But it was too late. The ocean had made its decision. A massive wave crashed over them, nearly capsizing the vessel. The force of it sent Javier sprawling onto the deck, the wind knocked from his lungs. Dark shapes moved beneath the surface, circling, waiting. One of the men lost his footing and slipped, falling overboard. A scream pierced the air as he hit the water. The fisherman rushed to the edge, watching as the ocean swallowed him whole. For a moment, nothing. Then, the water churned red. The sharks had claimed their first victim. Javier's breath caught in his throat. They weren't going to stop. This wasn't just an attack. It was an execution. Javier's hands trembled as he clung to the splintered railing, his breath coming in short gasps. The sea had become a raging battlefield, and the fishermen were losing. The young shark, now revealed to be seeking vengeance for its slain sibling, led the attack with terrifying precision. Another impact rocked the boat, sending one of the men sprawling. Panic gripped the crew. The water level inside the boat was rising fast, and the sharks showed no signs of retreating. "We have to abandon ship," someone screamed, eyes wild with terror. But Javier knew, the ocean was no longer their escape. It was their judgment. One of the fishermen grabbed a life vest and lunged for the emergency raft. As soon as he hit the water, a shadow surged forward beneath him. A massive set of jaws broke the surface, dragging him down with a single, chilling snap. The ocean swallowed his scream, leaving only ripples behind. Javier turned, his heart hammering. There was no way out. The bearded fisherman still clutched his harpoon, his face pale. He looked at the young shark circling them, eyes burning with fury. He raised his weapon, ready to strike. Javier acted without thinking. He tackled the man, knocking the harpoon from his grasp. It clattered onto the deck and slid toward the edge. "What are you doing?" the man roared. "We've done enough damage," Javier gasped. "This isn't a battle we can win." The fisherman shoved him aside, lunging for the weapon, but he was too slow. Another powerful hit from below sent the boat tilting violently to one side. The harpoon tumbled overboard, sinking into the dark abyss. Javier barely managed to grip the railing, but the others weren't so lucky. One by one, they were thrown into the water. Their screams were swallowed by the roaring ocean. Javier held on with every ounce of strength he had left, watching in horror as the sharks circled, their dark fins cutting through the surface like knives. The sea had claimed them. Then, silence. The boat had stopped rocking. The sharks were gone. The young shark, the one who had led this vengeance, now lingered just beyond the wreckage, watching. Its eyes locked onto Javier's. Javier braced himself. Was this it? Would he be the next to fall? But the shark didn't attack. Instead, it turned away. Javier exhaled sharply as he watched the powerful creature disappear into the deep. It had taken its revenge. And now, it had spared him. Alone on the sinking boat, Javier understood. The ocean had not just punished them, it had taught them. And he would never forget. Thanks for watching this far, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next story.